Golden Empire Television, Kern County In Depth with 17's Jim Scott.
And welcome. Thanks for stopping in this weekend. During this program on Kern County In Depth, I will take you over to Bitwise Industries' new offices in Bakersfield for a closer look at this high-tech training ground that could reinvigorate our local economy, not just downtown, but countywide. I'll give you a first look at a new nonprofit in Bakersfield. It's called 911 at Ease, an international organization focused on supporting our first responders with confidential, professional, and trauma-informed counseling services. But first, some would argue this is another piece to the complex puzzle of combating homelessness here in Kern County. On Tuesday, county supervisors unanimously passed a new ordinance that sets boundaries and limits to where unsheltered individuals can set up camp, if you will. After reviewing existing law and court rulings and examining similar ordinances in other communities, county staffers came up with this list of provisions: prohibiting camping, sitting or lying down with the intent to camp in public areas, sidewalks, streets, alleys, doorways, entrances to buildings. No camping within 500 feet of a school or library. No camping within 10 feet of a residential property. The ordinance also makes provisions for enforcement and a process to connect unsheltered individuals with available shelter space and services to get off and perhaps stay off the streets. County officials say they have spent millions of dollars in recent years improving services and adding shelter space to address the homeless problem. But too many people are still living, camping in public areas in places not meant for human habitation. Joining me now for a brief recap, Amanda Ruiz. She is a senior fiscal and policy analyst for the County of Kern and the County Administrative Office and is the county's lead on homeless issues. Ms. Ruiz, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. The board got a lot of pushback on this ordinance, a few disruptions too during Tuesday's meeting, which seems to have become the norm to some degree. So for those who assert that the county is merely criminalizing and marginalizing the unsheltered with this unlawful camping ordinance, what would you say to them?
I would say that this ordinance is really just one piece of our overall plan. And on October 12th, we went to the board and introduced a few programs that we're introducing. So one of those is the co-response teams, which will pair up a Bakersfield police officer with a behavioral health specialist, and they will go out and answer those homelessness calls. We already have a behavioral health specialist in their dispatch. In addition to that, we are looking at producing a tiny home project. We are also expanding property or developing a property on our M Street Navigation Center that will allow for safe camping or parking. So people, you know, if they go up to the ordinance and then they tell them, hey, you can't sleep here, you can sleep here in the safe camping area. And that is really meant to transition individuals into our navigation center if they're initially shelter resistant. So it's really just one part of our overall plan. So I know that there is focus on just the ordinance, but that is not our intent. Our intent is to use it as an outreach tool to then move them into permanent housing.
And also, there will be services provided to link the unsheltered who are have trouble acclimating to a structured shelter environment because of one, mental illness, or two, drug addiction problems, to connect them with services to help get them back on that path to recovery, right?
Yeah, so that's what our tiny homes will be. It's focused on those individuals that don't do well in a congregate setting, so they wouldn't, you know, prosper at M Street Navigation Center or Brundage Lane, so they could go to the tiny home facility, have their own space, and work on getting into that permanent housing.
So that is a project in the making, we should say, huh?
Yes.
They're still working on that.
Still working
That's
on it.
Complex. Service providers, though, and advocates, the people who deal with the unsheltered on a daily basis, basically signed off on this ordinance, right?
Yeah, we had a lot of support, and it's something we worked on with them and said, you know, is this going to work? We're not, like I mentioned, we're not moving people, just criminalizing homeless. We're trying to provide that interaction with our homeless service providers, with our street outreach, with our officers, and say, you know, you can't stay here, you can stay somewhere else. So we're not just criminalizing homelessness, we're going to move them into a safer facility, because it's not safe to sleep outside when it's so cold, when it's 100 degrees like it does here in Bakersfield.
Right. Amanda Ruiz, thank you for your time, and we'll be checking in with you in a couple of months and follow up on this and see how we'll get a status report on this ordinance.
Yep.
Okay?
Thank
you again. All right. After the break, your first look at a new nonprofit in Kern County dedicated to making sure our first responders who are dealing with service-related trauma are getting the best counseling available. You're watching Kern County In Depth. And we are back now. It was an impressive turnout in Bakersfield Wednesday night in support of a relatively new nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting our local first responders and their families who are dealing with service-related trauma.
You can't go to a disaster without having it affect you. You can't be in a trauma-based organization without being traumatized. So instead of hoping it won't happen, we've come to understand that trauma will happen.
Policing is one of those career doesn't.
That video was part of Wednesday night's presentation to supporters of 911 at Ease. The Kern County chapter of this organization was formed back in January. The nonprofit supports first responders from police to firefighters to paramedics by providing free and confidential clinical counseling services for those who are experiencing service-related post-traumatic stress injuries.
Confidentiality is something that first responders really worry about. There's been a stigma that has been attached to the profession ever since I began 35 years ago, that people were afraid to reach out and get help. And so what we do at 911 at Ease International is we offer that safe, confidential avenue where they can get the help and the right help with people that know how to deal with first responders.
Since its formation in January, more than 100 first responders in Kern County have taken advantage of the counseling services provided at no cost by 911 at Ease. With me now, the man who spearheaded that fundraiser, Trevor Martinezson, is program manager for the Kern County chapter of 911 at Ease International. Job well done on your first fundraiser early on in this nonprofit. What was the latest tally? What is the latest tally?
So our event was a great success. Our early numbers are showing that we raised close to $175,000. That's going to lead us right into 2022. It's going to get us going for the year, and then we're just going to continue to build on that.
Now, your colleague Mike McGrew touched on it in that interview. In your own words, what makes the counseling services that you offer so effective in helping first responders who are struggling with post-traumatic stress injury?
Yeah, so I think the best part about this is the confidentiality. That we can have a first responder, a family member, an immediate family member of a first responder, a critical hospital care worker. They can reach out to 911 at Ease, and it's 100% confidential. Their agency, their hospital, their department, their supervisors, they will never know who is seeking help, and we can get our first responders that help they need, their families, and keep them strong, keep them on the streets.
Have you ever been in need yourself of this kind of counseling service? Or do you have colleagues within the fire department that have needed this kind of counseling?
Yeah, so one of the most rewarding parts in the last, I believe it's been 6 months that I've been working for 911 at Ease. I've had several members of several different departments within Kern County first come up and ask me how I like being involved with 911 at Ease. I tell them I love it, it's been a great honor. And then those same individuals tell me that they've actually reached out and used the program, and that how it's helped their marriages, it's helped them with other job-related stresses. So that's been super rewarding.
And isn't it important to stress here that it's not just for first responders, but also family members can access this clinical counseling, right? Yeah,
that's one of the most important parts. So the goal here is to keep the families strong, whether it's the kids that are suffering, whether it's the parents, whether it's the marriage. We want to make sure that we're supporting our first responders in all the different aspects of their life.
All right, so how can our viewers, if they feel so inclined, get involved with 911 at Ease Kern County, perhaps even donate? Yeah, I love that you asked me that. So go to our website, 911aei.org.
There's a 1-800 number if you need to request help, but there's also a donor link. Make sure you hit that Kern Counter button. We want to make sure that all money that's raised here in Kern County stays in Kern County. Absolutely.
Trevor Martinezson, keep up the good work, and thank you for your service to our community, not only as a city firefighter, but also as the program manager for 911 at East Kern County.
Great. Thank
All
you,
right,
sir.
Thank you. All right. A deeper dive into what's going on in that building downtown that is occupied by Bitwise Industries and why it is generating such a positive buzz in Bakersfield. This is Kern County In Depth. We are back now. Can a single business transform a local economy? Perhaps not by itself, but in a collaborative effort, maybe so. For Bakersfield, that business may be Bitwise Industries. Fresno-based Bitwise Industries is completing work on its new offices in downtown Bakersfield. It's essentially 3 businesses in one, all linked together to provide employment opportunities in technology. It's a high-tech academy for budding software developers, web designers, and tech consultants. It offers shared workspaces for young entrepreneurs and private office space for promising tech startups, all at reasonable rents. Hard to miss Bitwise's colorful building at H and 18th Street. It's the old Turk's Copy building. It's been renovated and repurposed and designed to encourage collaboration within the varied disciplines of our high-tech industry in a way that really has never been seen before in Bakersfield. Besides multiple classrooms and the shared private collaborative workspaces for rent, there will be a tap room open to the public for social gatherings where you can grab a glass of wine or beer. And soon, just 2 doors down on 18th Street, a coffee shop and a cocktail lounge. Now, Bitwise is laser focused on recruiting students from underserved neighborhoods and communities and providing them a pathway out of poverty with easy and affordable access to tech education and job training. The goal is to provide Kern County's economy a pool of tech-savvy workers who can do the high-tech jobs that are currently being outsourced to other regions in California. Bitwise Industries just about ready to unleash its transformative business model on Bakersfield once the pandemic relinquishes its grip. A conversation now with Amy Thielen, Vice President for Bitwise and a Bakersfield native. This is more than 2 years in the making. In your own words, what have you created here?
We are building tech economies in what we lovingly call underestimated cities. And we say underestimated really because it's just non-traditional tech towns that we believe has the talent to become a tech town.
Why do you think Bakersfield has the talent?
We did this in Fresno. Fresno is very similar to Bakersfield. There's a number of reasons why we've done it, but we know just from talking to the people, launching classes that are already remote, that there is a ton of interest in technology, and I think that goes in cities across America, cities that aren't your Austins, your Denvers, your Los Angeles, New York, right? There's more Bakersfields and Fresnos across the whole United States than there are those large metropolitan areas, and we know the talent's there. We know the love for technology is there. It just hasn't been built yet.
Well, your timing couldn't be better, considering all of the upheaval within our traditional clusters of industry here in Kern County, with the desire to downsize the oil industry and all the pressures on ag and those kind of things. The timing couldn't be better, right?
Yeah. And, you know, across America right now, we're having these conversations, and a lot of the expansion cities you and I have kind of briefly touched on. These conversations are happening everywhere, right? We're losing jobs here. I have family, friends, you know, acquaintances that have lost jobs in oil just due to state regulations, whatever it might be. But those same people are the same people coming to us looking to upskill or completely reskill in a profession. And they're people that have probably never thought of technology as an option for a career. And those are the type of people we see walking through our doors every day.
So describe what's inside this building.
Yeah, so we do a number of things. There's really 3 main lines of business, and outside of those lines of business, there's actually a number of other things we do. But for the sake of today's discussion, we'll keep it to the 3 main things. So the first pillar of what we do is our workforce training and workforce development. So that is educating, that's reskilling, that's upskilling those individuals in our community. So the four pre-apprenticeship classes are website for beginners, mobile-friendly apps, JavaScript and React. Now, these computer programming languages are just that. It's actually learning a language on the computer, right? It's learning how to code and how to create content and build websites and build apps. And we're really trying to build the most diverse tech workforce out there because we really target marginalized, underrepresented individuals. We have pre-apprenticeship courses, and there's 4 main ones. If you take those 4, it's $1,000 for all 4, so $250 each. You come out as an entry-level developer. So what that means and what that does to our economy and just local community is you typically have people, the people that walk through the doors and into our classrooms are typically adult learners. Some may have a degree, the majority do not. Some may not even have a high school diploma. And they are typically working retail, restaurant work, whatever industry it might be, but you typically see them making roughly 20 grand a year, let's say, and a lot of them with no benefits. You come out of that pre-apprenticeship training and you're looking at the $50,000 to $65,000 mark with benefits as an entry-level developer. So it's a huge shift taking that bottom third of the economy and moving them into the top third. You can imagine what that does to the rest of local businesses and all of that as you start to create these earners. Anybody who can't pay for our classes, we've never turned somebody away. So one of the biggest things we're doing in workforce development and workforce training is removing barriers. One class makes you eligible for apprenticeship. After that, we send you on, we have about 20 different pathways for apprenticeships. So that could be inside sales, it could be online marketing, so things outside of software development, right? Salesforce administrators, anybody with a Salesforce in their business, which is nearly every business, the vast majority are using Salesforce, the application and website, to track their sales and build out their sales team. That program itself requires an administrator at an office typically to run that for any company. We are skilling up those people to become Salesforce administrators. This is an example of an apprenticeship that we are running, and we are paying those people for a year. A living wage, which in Bakersfield I think is $17.50 an hour with benefits. We're paying you like it's your job to learn. Wow. So that's how we're changing an entire industry and bringing people in that have typically been left out. We have a huge philanthropy department, and because of the change we're making in the cities and the communities that we're in.
Tell me a success story from Bitwise Industries.
Well, this is actually a good segue into what we call our Ignite Innovation Lab. It's our entrepreneurship side of our business, right? I mentioned we have these 3 wonderful pillars that are really the model and foundation to Bitwise. But underneath that, we have something called Bitwise Ventures. So we're big on entrepreneurship. We want people creating and adding to the community. And the way we think you do that partially is through entrepreneurship. So we've launched a smaller version of Ignite Innovation Lab, which will be here. We did one in Fresno, and it was called the Founders Cohort. And we had somebody, we actually have had somebody exit and sell to Remax, a company they started called Listing Alert, and that was on the entrepreneurship side. And so we will be launching that come November 15th here. It's really an accelerator of sorts. Businesses just getting off the ground. But that's a pretty big, success story in the grand scheme of things when you're talking about non-traditional founders, and we say that in a way where this is the first time they're doing this.
All right, I am with Amy Thielen. She is Vice President for Bitwise Industries, and we are back with more after the break. You're watching Kern County In Depth. Welcome back. So once you've graduated from one of the many apprenticeship programs at Bitwise Industries and you have the skills to build software or install digital infrastructure or design websites, whatever your skill might be, then what do you do? Amy Thielen says you apply your new skills through tech consulting.
There's a number of companies that do tech consulting across the country, right? We just didn't have a lot of them in Bakersfield. I talked to a lot of local businesses, our government. Oftentimes they would outsource it over the hill to Los Angeles or up to the Bay. Now that money can be poured right back into our community. It can stay here in our economy, and it can go into the pockets of the individuals that have now, learned this new skill. So we're building software already today for a number of folks here in town. We also, within that tech consulting side, there's a lot of discussion around infrastructure, right? At the federal level, we saw what happened this last week. That money is going to pour into the communities, and part of it is going to go to the digital infrastructure that we need in our cities. So building websites, building applications, doing digital literacy, building infrastructure, that's all part of our tech consulting side of the business, which is that second leg.
And so what is the third leg to
The
this?
the third leg, you're looking at it. It's place. It's where do you house this then? How do you create something in our city that creates vibrancy and energy and just attracts people to the building? And we take these, often blighted, buildings in downtown in the urban core of the cities we're in, and we completely revitalize them. We make them fun. We add, a craft cocktail room and a coffee shop and a tap room with beer and wine, and you invite the public in, and we very much, our architects design this in a way where when you're sitting in our tap room having a drink after work, and there's a glass piece that you can see right into Bitwise, so that you go, what is that? What are they doing here? And it starts that conversation, and it just, word by word of mouth, you've now started to spread the business.
What happened to the surrounding business zone at your flagship offices in Fresno?
We saw a ton of what were vacant buildings prior to that being leased over the last 10 years, and the downtown has completely changed. It's more walkable. The city government has put more money into the area. Other local small businesses, restaurants, whatever it might be, right? Things that had traditionally been vacant for years and years, you start to just see this transformation of city blocks.
What's it mean to you to be at the helm of a venture like Bitwise Industries in your hometown?
Well, I hope you can hear the excitement.
No, I didn't catch it.
I love technology. I've been in it for over a decade, and I love that. I finally, when I moved back here to town, I thought, okay, I'm just going to work remote for a company, right, in Austin or in Silicon Valley. And when I knew Bitwise was coming here, I said to myself, I have to work here. And what we do in our cities, we just recently announced Toledo, Ohio, and we're about to announce another 6 outside of California. We will hire the vice president of that area. We want them to traditionally be from there or have lived there a number of years, because there's something to be said about doing this for your community, right? We don't want somebody from Fresno coming down here. They're not going to care the same way that I care. I grew up in this community. I went to high school. I moved back. My family's here. I want to see Bakersfield, not just succeed, but yeah, this is going to change a lot of our city, and for the better. And so if you can't see it in my face, I hope you hear it in my words.
I got an inkling that you're pretty excited.
I am really excited.
You are not quite ready for a grand opening yet, right?
So building's done. We're just waiting to safely open. So when that happens, Bitwise is known to throw a heck of a party. So we will invite everybody from the city. We'll have a huge grand opening, and I hope that happens in early 2022. But we're all just kind of waiting, right, until we can do this safely.
So get vaccinated, Kern County, right?
Yep.
What's on tap for this virtual town hall that you have coming up on November 17th?
Yep, November 17th at 6 p.m. Anybody who has questions of how can I join one of these apprenticeships, how can I take a pre-apprentice class, how can I work for Bitwise, what's to come in 2022, all those questions will be answered.
To learn more about Bitwise, you can go to their website at bitwiseindustries.com, and to send them questions in advance of that upcoming virtual town hall, send those questions to pr@bitwiseindustries.com. And there's more from my conversation with Amy Thielen in a web extra on the KCID webpage on our website, kget.com. And that is Kern County In Depth for this weekend. Thank you for stopping in. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you next weekend.
Kern County In Depth with Jim Scott is a production of Kern Golden Empire Television.